One of the largest apocalypses that humanity has experienced happened about 74,000 years ago on the territory of modern Indonesia. It was an eruption of a supervolcano on Mount Toba. It was also the biggest eruption on Earth over the last 2 million years. Even the tragedy of Pompeii, when the volcano Vesuvius destroyed the entire city, was not so large-scale. At the time of the Toba eruption, humanity was as close to extinction as ever. And the problem wasn't in the volcano itself, but in the consequences that came after. Some studies suggest that 3,000 to 10,000 people could survive the period after the eruption. During the disaster, Toba released millions of tons of volcanic ash and soot. This cloud spread across the sky, blocking the sun in India, Indonesia, and over the Indian Ocean. Some scientists claimed the world had been plunged into volcanic winter for several decades. Take a look out the window in cloudy weather. Do you see how gray clouds cover the sky? But still, clouds let the sunlight pass through. It was much worse during the Toba eruption, since sulfur dioxide in the volcanic ash reflected sunlight. Dust and ashes didn't settle for a long time. Perhaps they flew all over the planet, destroying many living things. A lot of plants couldn't survive because of the lack of sunlight. Also, Earth's temperature dropped by several degrees, which led to new disasters. In today's modern world, the temperature doesn't affect residents of our cities that much. But for nature, even minor changes may entail catastrophic consequences. For example, plants and insects can live at the same temperature for thousands of years, but a sharp cold snap destroys them. This leads to the fact that almost all animals don't get enough food to feed their offspring. The population of all creatures in the wild is dropping. The ancient people of that time survived by hunting herbivores and gathering berries, fruits, and mushrooms. But the eruption destroyed almost all of it. Also, a lack of light caused a lack of vitamin D. As a result, people were starving and they also were pretty depressed. However, some scientists think that many people survived this period quite easily, especially those who lived on the coast of South Africa. The ocean received the most minor damage from the disaster. The tribes who lived near the water caught a lot of fish. Both versions haven't yet been proven. Scientists still try to build an accurate picture of human development after this volcanic apocalypse. About 50,000 years after the Toba eruption, when the sun had finally passed through the gray clouds and the ash settled on the ground, nature and people began to restore the previous balance. But the warm times quickly didn't start as the Ice Age had already begun, and this problem was much more severe, as it lasted for thousands of years. Decreased solar activity and planet orbit changes led to strong temperature drops. Eternal cold covered almost the entire globe, forcing all living beings to migrate and struggle for survival. Such powerful animals as mammoths and saber-toothed tigers couldn't survive the Ice Age. But Homo sapiens were able to adapt to their new weather conditions. People hid in caves, made fires, and improved their hunting skills. Therefore, in a sense, the Ice Age made humanity stronger. In the modern world, such weather can cause significant problems for the global economy and create financial crises worldwide. The last period similar to the Ice Age happened at the beginning of the 19th century. Mount Tambora in Indonesia exploded and released millions of tons of pumice, soot, and volcanic ash into the sky. People who lived on a volcanic island got the most severe damage in the first few minutes, but then the eruption's consequences began to reach the whole world. Volcanic ash again blocked sunlight and led to one of the coldest years in North America and Eurasia. This year, 1816, is better known in history as the year without summer. The ash cloud increased humidity and lowered the temperature in many areas. In the summer of 1816 in Central and Western Europe and North America, a humid climate and cold destroyed the harvest. Prices for goods rose and poor people lost access to food. Logistics and transport also suffered. People used horses to move around at that time, and since oats became expensive, many couldn't afford to keep these animals. Many believe these circumstances inspired the inventor Carl Dreis to create the world's first bicycle. Also, there's a theory that the Tambora eruption helped invent Frankenstein. Several writers, including Byron and Shelley, gathered in a villa in Switzerland where they began to write fantastic novels. Bad weather and rain outside the window inspired Mary Shelley to write a story about Dr. Frankenstein and his monster. Even now, this volcano is active, but it's not going to wake up anymore. But if it happens again, will we be ready this time? Most likely, there will be fewer consequences since we have technologies, big incubators, and greenhouses where we grow livestock, vegetables, and fruits. Of course, winter will provoke a crisis all year round, but we can easily survive it. In the 1930s, another disaster occurred, but this time it was caused not only by nature, but also by people. At that time, many countries were heavily dependent on crops. Vast territories were sown with them. People were engaged in excessive farming. Therefore, when a severe drought began, the soil was quickly depleted. The ground ran out of nutrients necessary for the growth of wheat and corn. This led to the fact that the top layer of soil was turned into tiny dust. Then, west-easterly winds hit such states as Colorado, Nebraska, Texas, and Oklahoma. They rose the dust into the air and formed thick clouds. This period is considered the most challenging time of the Great Depression. It's the Dust Bowl. It lasted 8 years and forced many people to leave their homes and move to other states. Dust storms got so strong that they blocked the sun in Washington, D.C. Whole cities were covered with rain from sand, which caused problems with breathing. Even the captains of ships sailing in the Atlantic Ocean reported polluted air. Powerful earthquakes, supervolcano eruptions, floods, fires, and hurricanes swept whole species of animals off the planet. But a human has always survived in the most challenging conditions, so don't worry about the next global catastrophe. People will handle it. We hope so. But what if some global catastrophe happens? For example, a huge meteorite falls or the atmosphere gets poisoned. In this case, it'd be best to find a remote island or fly to the moon. The main thing is to have the opportunity to return. After all, sooner or later, the apocalypse ends and Earth will be as good as new. Probably. Another option is to live in an underground bunker with large reserves of food and oxygen. About 8 billion people are living in the world. For humanity to prosper again after the apocalypse and restore its population, 1 to 500 people will be enough. There have been cases in world history when small tribes numbering a few hundred people have lived for centuries and even millennia. However, to do this, you'd have to leave megacities. Big towns only import food. They're heavily dependent on farm fields and crops. During some global catastrophe, no one would give food to the cities. Hunger would lead to complete chaos. To live well, people would need to escape from their towns and repeat the practice of those who lived in the early Neolithic period. It was about 12,000 years ago, just after the end of the last ice age. People at that time lived separately in small villages. The population of each of them was from a couple of hundred to 1,000 people. They lived independently, provided food, and made big families. In fact, it's not such a bad option after the apocalypse to grow vegetables on a small farm, eat healthy food, and enjoy nature.
The scariest legend from Norse mythology, Ragnarok, could have been inspired by true events. Yeah, that story where Thor and the other deities go down fighting and the whole world ends, only to start later again. Around the mid-6th century of the current era, 2 massive volcanic eruptions took place on the American continent. These eruptions sent huge amounts of gas and sulfur dioxide into the air, which made the climate much colder across the northern hemisphere, including Denmark. In old records from China during those times, they wrote the sun got dim and cold like the moon. Grain crops couldn't ripen properly, and stars were hidden for over a year because of the volcanic particles that still lingered in the sky. Scientists wanted to understand how this colder weather affected trees, so they studied the growth rings of Danish oak trees from around that time. They wanted to see how the shift in weather patterns affected tree growth during this period. The scientists compared tree samples from Denmark with ice core samples from Greenland. These ice cores hold layers of snow and ice that trap tiny bits of sulfur and other particles from past volcanic eruptions, so they can show when these eruptions occurred. The tree rings show that the trees grew less than normal in the middle of the 6th century, so the weather was much colder than usual, probably because of volcanic ash in the sky. Some farms were abandoned during that time, and nature began to reclaim these areas. All this may have caused big shifts in society, like changes in village structure and ritual practices. Archaeologists have also found many valuable objects buried during that time. It looks like people were trying to offer them to deities to bring back the sun. They feared that an endless winter before Ragnarok would start if they didn't do something. A long time before that, in what is now England, people were busy building Stonehenge. There's no debate that the larger stones were brought there by humans, but there's a new theory about the smaller so-called blue stones. They don't seem so blue on a sunny day, but they do have a bluish tinge when rain falls on them or you break them, so be careful. So the main theory is that our Neolithic ancestors worked hard to bring the stones from the Preseli Hills to Salisbury Plain. A new study suggests that long ago, during the Ice Age, glaciers might have used the Bristol Channel as a highway to move rocks. They found a large, unusual rock called a glacial erratic in Limeslade Bay. A glacial erratic is a rock or boulder moved from its original home by a glacier to a new place. The rock in Limeslade Bay is made of a type of stone called dolerite, which isn't found in the Bay Area. But it matches rocks from North Pembrokeshire, which means it likely traveled by glacier to its new location. A massive glacier from the Irish Sea must have picked up this huge rock in Pembrokeshire and carried it southeast, then east, right up the Bristol Channel. They also found other glacial erratics along the Bristol Channel, which only supports this idea. So, if the new theory is correct, it means that Neolithic people didn't carry the bluestones to Salisbury Plain, but found them already there and decided to use them to build Stonehenge. Now, if you don't like shopping lists, try thinking of them as historical documents that someone will find, say, 3,500 years from now. Archaeologists in a region of Turkey that was known for the production of pottery, metal, and glass found one shopping list that was this old on a clay tablet. It's roughly the size of a large postage stamp and was made by people who lived in Mesopotamia. They used a very old type of writing called cuneiform, which means wedge-shaped, as it was made up of marks that look like wedges. The language written on this tablet is called Akkadian, and it went extinct long ago. They used sounds to make words, just like we do today. To write these sounds, they borrowed symbols from an even older language called Sumerian. The tablet itself is a kind of shopping list left by people who were buying a large amount of furniture. They mention tables, chairs, and stools. This record helps us understand how people in the Late Bronze Age kept track of goods, money, and trade. Looks like they had an organized system for buying and selling things. Meanwhile, the Bronze Age shopping list is a youngster compared to what is thought to be the oldest calendar in the world. It shows the fall and impact of a comet from around 13,000 years ago. The carving is part of the Göbekli Tepe temple complex in Turkey. Talk about alliteration. It has large round stone structures and pillars that are carved with pictures of animals and symbols. People in the Neolithic period, around 11,000 years ago, built the temple, and it might have been used for something like a giant observatory for watching the night sky. One of the most interesting objects at the complex is a tall carved vulture stone. This stone has the image of a bird and other designs on it. One scientist who studied it thought the designs might show constellations. The carvings could tell the story of a huge comet that changed the weather patterns on Earth and caused a mini ice age. There are small V-shaped marks on the pillars at Göbekli Tepe, which could be used for counting days, and other stones could show big celestial events, like meteors or comets passing by. Archaeologists in Italy, near the ancient city of Naples, were checking the ground to change the city's water pipes when they found a tomb that is about 2,000 years old. It had been well preserved, with paintings on the walls that show scenes from myths and ceilings that haven't faded. This tomb of Cerberus was named after the most famous painting you can find inside. Cerberus was a creature from Greek mythology, a huge, scary dog with 3 heads. He was known as the guard dog of the underworld. One famous myth you can see on the walls of the tomb is the story of Hercules capturing Cerberus as part of his 12 labors. As the archaeologists kept digging, they discovered images of ichthyocentaurs, creatures that were like a mix between a mermaid and a centaur. The tomb also has a large altar with vessels for liquids that they would pour out as an offering to honor the deities. The person who was buried here lies on a decorated burial bed, surrounded by paintings, symbols, and objects that people in ancient times believed would bring peace or help in the afterlife. The tomb was just found in October 2023 and is not open to visitors yet, as archaeologists are still studying it. Scientists have long wondered how heavy stone blocks were carried to the sites of the pyramids in Egypt, and they might finally have an answer. Researchers from the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, believe that the ancient Egyptians built 31 pyramids along an ancient branch of the River Nile. It's now hidden under desert and farmland. It's not a new idea, but up until recently, scientists weren't sure of the location, shape, size, or proximity of the waterway the pyramid builders could have used for transportation. This time, they used radar satellite imagery, historical maps, geophysical surveys, and sediment coring to map the river branch. A major drought and sandstorms likely buried it thousands of years ago. The team managed to go below the sand surface and get images of some hidden features thanks to radar technology. They found hidden rivers and ancient structures running at the foothills of where most of the ancient Egyptian pyramids lie. Thanks to this discovery, we can now understand why they decided to build so many pyramids between Giza and Lish in what is now an inhospitable area of the Sahara Desert.
Seen a good horror movie lately? If you're a fan of those, then you can appreciate a good plot. But what if I told you that Mother Nature is the best scriptwriter ever? Ancient disasters were scarier than any horror movie today. From tsunamis to volcanic eruptions, you'll be shocked by the scale of these events. One natural disaster you definitely don't want to experience is a tsunami. Those gigantic walls of water sweep across the coast and take out everything in their way. And it's nothing new for our planet. Scientists were able to piece together a timeline based on evidence that major tsunamis left. In northern Chile, a large boulder sits high above the Pacific Ocean. Behind it, a desert as far as the eye can see. This 44-ton stone obviously doesn't belong here. It's the result of an ancient tsunami. Waves as high as a 6-story building carried boulders like pebbles. Researchers estimate this happened in 1420. But how can they possibly know this? In the 15th century, there were no written records in the region. Time for some detective work. Archaeologists discovered that around the same time, there was a tsunami in Japan, on the other side of the Pacific Ocean. The ground shook off the coast of Chile. That's how the tsunami was created. Then the wave traveled nearly 2/5 of the Earth's circumference. That's one tireless tsunami. But this wasn't a one-time event. Evidence suggests that a similar event happened 3,800 years ago. Ancient people abandoned their coastal villages around this time. They were moving inland. How did they know it was time to go? There's evidence of erosion due to strong currents, telltale signs of an ancient tsunami. As you know from school textbooks, oxygen is 21% of the air we breathe, but it wasn't always a part of Earth's atmosphere. Oxygen was missing during the first half of our planet's lifespan. Carbon dioxide and methane were the name of the game back then. CO2 is what makes our drinks fizz. But isn't the other gas dangerous? Yes, because you can't smell methane. And that's the reason there was no life on Earth billions of years ago. So how did we get from methane to oxygen? in come the cyanobacteria. This group of microbes started to evolve some 2.7 billion years ago. These tiny microbes mastered photosynthesis, converting sunlight into energy. And the byproduct of this process was, you've guessed it, oxygen. Soon it started escaping from water into the atmosphere. There, it reacted with methane, and over time, O2 replaced it completely. Scientists named this process the Great Oxidation Event. But how could it be bad? After all, we're alive thanks to it. All that oxygen acted as a poison for anaerobic organisms. And no, these are not life forms that didn't do aerobics or Pilates. The term simply means that these microorganisms didn't need oxygen to grow. Too much oxygen, and they would be goners. And that's precisely what happened. Scientists spoke of an oxygen overshoot that changed Earth's atmosphere for good. The disappearance of most anaerobic organisms was an early example of an extinction event. They didn't like the atmosphere at the time and decided to step down. But look on the bright side. They made room for oxygen-loving humans to enter the picture. Let's go to Turkey. No, not the seaside resorts that tourists visit in the summer, but the region of Anatolia in the southeast of the country. Göbekli Tepe is the world's oldest known temple site. It dates back to the Neolithic period. Scientists found a stone pillar here that tells a tale of an ancient disaster. They presume that the pillar is commemorative. Today, humans still build similar structures to mark an important event or a person. Just one example is the Washington Memorial. It was built in honor of the first American president, George Washington. But the pillar in Turkey doesn't commemorate a happy event. Scientists believe it shows a devastating occurrence, a comet crashing into the Earth. The event must have been destructive. There are also other signs on the monument. These symbols align with the setup of the night sky stars for the year 10,950 BCE. The date astounded the researchers. It matched their earlier research of an ice core sample in Greenland. This showed that a comet fragment hit our planet around the same time. The archaeological site could have easily been an ancient observatory. And whoever worked at it observed a cataclysmic event. The impact must have been so powerful that it changed the Earth's rotational axis. That's the imaginary pole going through our planet from top to bottom. That ancient comet must have packed a punch to knock the blue planet off balance. Have you heard of the city of Tal El Hammam in the valley of the Jordan River? The reason why your answer is probably no is that the city doesn't exist today. It completely disappeared around the year 1650 BCE. It was one of the three major cities in this part of the Middle East. Together, these three cities had a population bigger than Palm Springs today. At the time, Tal El Hammam was a metropolis. It even had high-rises, 5-story buildings constructed using mud bricks. But archaeologists found strange markings on them. The bricks melted as they were exposed to high temperatures. Yes, sound the fire alarm. Some sort of disaster had caused a major fire. Archaeological finds pointed to a suspect for such damage, a rock from space. So, where was the crater? This comet, or an asteroid, never made it to the ground. It was traveling at high speed, so it disintegrated before hitting the ground. Such an event is called an airburst. The largest witnessed meteor airburst happened over Tunguska in the north of Asia in 1908. Scientists estimated that the airburst in Tal El Hammam happened 2.5 miles above the city. This event released a lot of energy. Air temperature quickly rose to 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit. That's hot enough to set clothes and wood on fire in an instant. Mud bricks and tools made from metal start to melt when exposed to such heat. This would explain the evidence scientists unearthed. But there was one more find: salt. The event was so powerful that it distributed salt over the region around the Dead Sea. Any farmer will tell you that salty soil and crops don't go well together. People started moving away from the area because they couldn't grow food. Imagine an island with whitewashed villages surrounded by a sapphire blue sea. Such a place exists in reality. It's the island of Santorini. But the history of this place hides a tale of destruction. The island is of volcanic origin. This means that a violent eruption created it some 3,000 years ago. Now there are two islands. The bigger one is shaped like a horseshoe. When you look at them from above, the two islands look like they form a circle. That's because they were once a single island. It had a large mountain and was round in shape. But then it all changed almost overnight. One of the largest volcanic eruptions in human history tore Santorini apart. The earth trembled, tsunamis formed, and clouds of ash filled the sky. A daunting image. People felt the eruption hundreds of miles away. When it was all over, seawater rushed into the caldera of the former volcano. That's why the water in the lagoon has such a beautiful color. Scientists know so much about Santorini's past because of an unlikely assistant, a tree. The juniper tree, to be exact. People use its aromatic wood for everything from furniture to making pencils. On the Greek island, its rings revealed the tale of the ancient eruption. As a tree grows, it doesn't only go up, it expands sideways as well. Each new layer of bark adds a ring to the trunk. It takes a year for one ring to form. And on Santorini, one ring was unnaturally pale. The scientists did the math and voila, they dated the eruption to 1560 BCE.
Once upon a time, I searched through the jungle, following a map poorly drawn on a piece of cloth. After days of walking, I reached an ancient Mayan temple. As soon as I stepped in, a strange noise echoed. I turned to leave, but suddenly the floor cracked beneath my feet. I fell into a 1,600-year-old tomb. Finally, I got lucky. That day, I walked out with shiny jades, carved seashells, a creepy afterlife mask, and a curse that's been haunting me ever since. Well, okay, maybe it didn't happen exactly like that. Or maybe it didn't happen to me. Sadly, real-life archaeology is not like Indiana Jones movies. However, the findings can be as exciting and important, especially in Belize, where archaeologists just found the first identifiable ruler's tomb in the lost Mayan city of Caracol after 40 years of digging. A team of archaeologists finally unsealed a hidden chamber, buried deep beneath a structure they'd already studied. And inside that tomb, which is indeed around 1,600 years old, was Tikab Shak, the first known king of Caracol. His name is commonly interpreted as Tree Branch Rain Deity, which is poetic and incredibly awesome. King Shak was believed to be a Mayan deity in control of rain, thunder, and lightning. According to folklore, he used axes to strike rain-bearing snakes in the sky to make the rain fall. The buried king is considered to be the dynasty founder. The royal dynasty he founded lasted more than 460 years. And judging by what was buried with him, we can assume that King Shak was greatly celebrated. His tomb had jade beads, carved bones, seashell jewelry, and ritual pottery vessels. One of those vessels shows Ekchua, the Maya deity of trade, receiving offerings. Others showed bound prisoners. Archaeologists could tell they had found some high royalty when they noticed a considerable presence of red cinnabar in the tomb, a rare and expensive material from the Mayan world. Then there's a jade mosaic mask, pieced together like a puzzle to cover the king's face in brilliant green. Jade wasn't used just because it was shiny. It was sacred and symbolically associated with life and demise. Polished jade glistens like it's been dipped in water, cool at first, but quickly warming in your hand. To the ancient Maya, this lifelike quality made jade a living, breathing substance. And for this reason, it possessed high religious and spiritual importance. The Maya associated it with the breath of life, with royalty, and with eternity. Covering someone's face in jade showed just how high-ranking that person was. King Shak's mask has yet to be examined properly, but another famous mask of King Pakal was made of over 346 green jade stone fragments. That's a lot of painstaking work. But maybe the most symbolically fascinating thing about this king was that he was old. Not just lived a good life old, toothless old. To us, that means he didn't clean his teeth properly, because no, you don't usually lose teeth just from getting old, as long as you maintain good oral hygiene and dental care. On the other hand, according to Maya legends, toothless elders were believed to have spiritual powers. Rulers and shamans mediated between realms, and aged or underworld deities were often shown as toothless in art. Now, speaking of realms, Mayan cosmology divided the universe into 3 layers. The upper world was where the deities lived. The middle world was where humans lived. It was carried on the back of a giant turtle or caiman, and surrounded by a primordial sea. Beneath it was the underworld, known as Xibalba, a dark and complex realm of spirits and ancestors. And certain people, especially rulers, shamans, and elders, were believed to move between these worlds. This king was a ruler, had a deity-like name, and was a toothless elder. Boy, his power level must have been off the charts. But that's not all. Here's the eerie part. The tomb was buried beneath another tomb, which was discovered all the way back in 1993. Archaeologists were investigating a different burial when they realized there was another chamber hidden beneath it, an interesting hiding place. Remarkably, it worked. For more than 1,600 years, no one found him. This makes Tekhab Shak's tomb the first ever discovered at Karakol that can be definitely linked to a known ruler, thanks to hieroglyphs, burial context, and artifacts. Now, if you're not a geography or history buff, you've probably never heard of Karakol. Today, it's a remote ruin deep in the jungles of western Belize. But around 16 centuries ago, Karakol was one of the largest and most powerful cities in the entire Maya world. At its peak, it covered over 77 square miles, which, for reference, is larger than modern-day Belize City. Its population was around 100,000 people. That's more than most cities in Europe had at that time. And it wasn't just big, it was advanced. Karakol had pyramids, ball courts, palaces, reservoirs, and a very complex road system. Stuff like limestone superhighways stretching miles through the jungle. Past excavations also turned up arrowheads, drills, spindle whorls, figurines, and everyday tools. King Shak's tomb was one of the 3 major tombs found in the northeast Acropolis. That's near Kana, the central archaeological complex at Karakol, and one of the tallest human-made buildings in all of Belize, even today. It reaches an imposing 141 feet high and contains multiple levels of elite residences and temples. But even with that size, finding tombs isn't easy at all. Most have already been looted. We don't know what else can be hidden there, and in some places, it's too risky to dig up without causing damage. That's why it took researchers decades to finally find something untouched. However, they were able to report over 850 burials and 175 tombs at Karakol over their 4-decade-long project. One of the earliest tombs, dating to around 350 CE, was a cremation burial containing ritual artifacts such as obsidian blades, atlatl spear points, and ceramic styles associated with central Mexico. So, if you're an archaeologist, this city seems to be an old historical gold mine. And old historical gold mines often come with warnings. For one thing, it's keep out, the ceiling might fall on you. Besides, even though scientists are excited about this discovery, if the king can really walk between realms, he's probably annoyed by all this. So what happens now that the king's eternal rest has been disturbed? Well, by opening and stepping into the tomb of Tekhab Shak, archaeologists basically stepped into a sealed sacred place. Maya tombs weren't just holes in the ground with a fancy coffin. They were sealed like cosmic vaults, locked up with stone, soil, and sometimes elaborate closing rituals. The goal was to mark the end of their use and protect what was inside. Archaeology at Karakol and other Maya cities shows this in action. Thick ceiling layers, termination offerings, and carefully placed debris, all saying, "This place is done, keep out." Today's archaeologists still treat them that way, working under Belizean laws and cultural protocols, making sure they explore with respect for what these spaces meant to the people who built them. However, it's eerie to think about mythology and whether King Chak is going to haunt the archaeologists. I guess we'll see. They shouldn't be afraid because he's old and has no teeth. Maybe he will annoy them with rain. He's named after a rain deity, after all, and we still don't know about his true power level. The Mayans were a fascinating civilization, and their structures are still among the most mysterious ones you can find. Despite being isolated from the known world, they also built pyramids without cranes, mapped stars without telescopes, and knew how to bury a king. Karakol is full of secrets. A hidden tomb under another tomb, a toothless king with a scary-looking mask and a deity's name. Almost unbelievable. And, amazingly, there is still stuff being found. So maybe it's not too late for me after all. But first, let's see the aftermath of this curse, huh?
Deep inside the heart of the Amazon rainforest lies a cave so massive it defies logic. Stretching for 2,000 feet, this tunnel is so big a human could easily walk around inside of it. Its walls are etched with deep, mysterious claw marks. But this is just one of many. If you travel to the south of Brazil, you'll stumble upon over 1,500 similar caves, ranging from modest tiny burrows to massive passageways. These are not your average spooky, bat-filled caverns. They're what researchers call paleo burrows, also known as ancient underground structures dug by creatures so colossal they make modern elephants look small. Whatever creature dug those tunnels displaced 800 elephants worth of dirt. I know, it still looks like a normal cave, but experts noticed this one was special because the walls were too neat and rounded, and the floor was too smooth. Besides, no water or erosion leaves such signs of serious digging power. These Brazilian caves are the largest geological records of animal activity on the planet. It's like stumbling into a prehistoric house made by creatures the size of cars. To unlock this mystery, researchers analyzed the scratch marks on the walls and realized they had probably been made by giant ground sloths, a species called valgipes, which could weigh nearly 9,000 pounds and eat your average annual menu in about 3 days. Despite being huge, these animals were not earthbenders. They had to work in groups if they wanted to dig such long tunnels. This is why scientists believe many sloths shared the same tunnel and dug it together. Even some giant armadillos may have helped with the digging. After all, they were ridiculously skilled excavators and lived there too. Okay, but why would a giant sloth or armadillo need a 2,000-foot-long underground lair? Great question. And the truth is, scientists aren't totally sure. It doesn't make sense for them to dig tunnels this massive just to escape predators, especially since the tunnels were big enough for a saber-toothed tiger to crawl in, for example. So, unless they installed prehistoric security systems, this theory has holes. Haha, pun intended. The best bet is probably climate. Back then, everything was drier and colder, and some species of giant sloths were living their best lives back when Earth was transitioning between cold and warmer periods. Their big bodies usually protected these animals from temperature changes, but drastic fluctuations probably made them hide in order to survive. Besides, just like modern sloths, giant sloths probably had a hard time maintaining their body temperature, and going underground for a while is a great way to protect your babies and save some energy. After all, the bigger you are, the more energy you spend. Some scientists believe these tunnels might have had rotating tenants. One sloth moves in, digs a bit, leaves some scratch marks, moves out. And sometime later, another one crashes there and adds its own decor touches. A hostel for ancient megafauna. All evidence points to a more timeshare situation than a prehistoric private property. After all, these creatures weren't exactly social butterflies. Most sloths and armadillos usually keep things strictly one-on-one, just mom and baby. Yeah, dad sloth stuck around only for the good part. But you probably noticed one tiny detail here. These guys are not around anymore. They went extinct 11,000 years ago, right around the time humans started to get popular on Earth, when another ice age was ending. In fact, 80% of all mammals that were heavier than 2 pounds disappeared then. The first culprit is, of course, the usual suspect: humans. Around 10,000 years ago, a wave of skilled hunters using distinctive tools like spear points spread across North America. The theory goes that American animals weren't used to this new predator, making them easy targets. Once the big plant eaters started vanishing, the big meat eaters followed. They didn't have enough food to survive, and it wasn't just excessive hunting that caused some damage. Early humans may have also harmed ecosystems in ways that made survival harder for large species. But wait, there's another suspect: climate change. Around the same time, Earth's climate got a major shakeup. The climate was going from super cold to only slightly cold. Just so you know, Earth's temperature was about 46 degrees Fahrenheit, making seasons change and plants perish. And if plants are no longer around, big animals that eat them, like our friends giant sloths, have less nutrition, making them even more vulnerable. Many scientists now think that both human impact and climate change played a role, just in different ways depending on the region. In some places, humans may have tipped the balance. In others, nature itself did the job. Either way, it was a perfect storm that ended the age of giants. Turns out, being huge isn't always a plus. Giant animals tend to live longer and reproduce slowly, which makes them sitting ducks when disaster strikes. Besides, it takes a long time for these guys to bounce back. After dinos disappeared, for example, it took 15 million years for new mega mammals to stomp onto the scene. The last major extinction happened around 12,000 years ago. Not really enough time for brand new massive beasts to evolve. Today's biggest ground animals, like elephants, rhinos, and bison, aren't newcomers. They're actually the tough survivors of that ancient chaos. And, well, at least we still live alongside the blue whale, the biggest mammal ever. But why did some prehistoric animals get so gigantic in the first place? Well, being big has some perks, in spite of all the extinction thing. It keeps you safe from predators and helps you win the fight for food. If plant eaters bulked up, predators had to level up too, just to keep up. And the environment plays a big role. You see, cold-blooded animals might grow bigger in hot places to stay cool, and warm-blooded giants thrive in cold places to stay warm. One paleontologist even suggested that some dino-sized vegetarians needed those massive bellies just to digest the tough, woody plants of their time, as if they had a salad bar inside their bodies. There's also the thing with oxygen. Back then, Earth's atmosphere had way more of it. That's a big deal, especially for creatures with less efficient breathing systems like insects. Higher oxygen levels meant their bodies could handle more growth and more activity, kind of like nature's turbo mode. We also have to discuss bones, specifically the lighter ones. Many huge dinosaurs had air sacs built into their skeletons, just like modern birds. This made their bones strong but not ridiculously heavy, meaning they could grow super tall or long without collapsing under their own weight. Those air sacs also helped with cooling down, which is super important when you're basically a walking oven of muscle. On the flip side, modern mammals are limited by gravity and biology. Bigger bodies need stronger hearts, lungs, and blood pressure just to keep functioning, and land doesn't offer much support. This also explains why whales got even bigger than dinosaurs. The ocean acts like a natural support system, which pretty much means that buoyancy helps hold up all that mass. So blue whales can hit a jaw-dropping 330,000 pounds without turning into pancakes. On land, that kind of size would be a serious health hazard. So ancient giants weren't just freaks of nature. They were the result of the right mix of air, food, physics, and environment working together in just the right way. The whole extinction event surely is a bummer for giant sloths that worked as gigantic engineers of nature, but it surely prevented us from sharing the planet with insects the size of crows, like some types of griffinflies or millipedes reaching almost 6 feet in length. Yikes! Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to appreciate modern sloths, slow, small, and thankfully incapable of terraforming the landscape and giving me insect-related panic attacks. Over the years, archaeologists have uncovered all kinds of stuff on runestones, curses, poems, protective magic spells, and even inheritance disputes. However, a newly uncovered ancient Norse artifact known as Svingerud stone has just one word on it. Sounds boring, right? Well, think again, because this might just be the oldest runestone ever discovered. Almost 2,000 years old. But that's not all. Excavations are still ongoing, and depending on what follows next, it could unravel secrets and the true meaning behind the mysterious magical runes. So let's explore and see just how much known history you can rewrite with only one engraved word on a stone. A long time ago, during the first few centuries of the Common Era, Scandinavians and Romans crossed paths. They traded goodies like glass and silver. And eventually, Roman customs and even written culture ended up north. The Nords liked the Roman alphabet but wanted their own letters copyrighted, so they decided to create their own unique characters, which they called runes. Almost 20 centuries later, in 2021, archaeologists were excavating an Iron Age burial site near the village of Svingerud in eastern Norway. Among the cremation graves, they uncovered a reddish sandstone slab that would become a centerpiece in a major Norwegian archaeological discovery. It's the size of a coffee table, measuring just over 12 inches across. The stone was found buried with burned bones and charcoal, part of an early cremation grave. The stone had runes engraved into it, looking rough and shallow, like they were scratched with the tip of a knife or something needle-like. Runestones are not unusual. Archaeologists are used to uncovering runic inscriptions, especially in this region. However, tests show that both the burial site and the carving on the stone likely date back to somewhere between the 1st and 3rd centuries. That places it deep in pre-Viking history, centuries before the Viking Age officially began around 800 CE. That makes it one of the oldest reliably dated examples of early writing in Scandinavia. When you look at these carvings, they either look like magical symbols made to call on Nordic deities to help you, or like random scratches made by an angry man hitting a stone with something sharp. But these are real letters, crude but intentional. It's an ancient writing system used by Germanic tribes across Northern Europe. They were engraved into wood, bone, or stone. Their shapes are straight, angular lines because curves were tough to carve with the tools they had back then. When they met with the Roman Empire, rather than just borrowing Latin letters, the Germanic tribes took the idea of writing and carved out their own version. The original alphabet was called Elder Futhark. It had 24 letters. We can find them on artifacts dating from around the 2nd to the 8th century CE. Its name comes from its first 6 letters: F, U, Th, A, R, and K. Each rune probably had a name that matched the sound it made. For example, the rune that sounds like A was called Anzus. However, nobody from back then left us a memo explaining the names. In fact, the knowledge of how to read them was forgotten until 1865, when Norwegian linguist Sophus Bugge deciphered them by comparing clues. He examined later rune alphabets and ancient poems that referenced the runes, like a detective sketching a suspect from scattered witness clues. For many runes, especially the oldest ones in the Elder Futhark, the meaning is still open to interpretation. They weren't common knowledge, which is reflected by the fact that only some 350 surviving inscriptions remain. This changed eventually when the Scandinavian language evolved from Proto-Norse into Old Norse, spoken by mighty Vikings. The Elder Futhark was reduced from 24 to 16 runes to reflect the changes in the language, thus becoming the Younger Futhark, which was far better spread. runes weren't really used to write books or keep daily records. Instead, you'd find them carved on gravestones, weapons, and various tools. It's believed that people used runes to show ownership, honor loved ones who had passed away, leave short messages, or sometimes for protection or magic. In the early days, some runes probably had special spiritual or ritual meanings too. One interesting fact about runestones specifically is that they were often used for self-promotion or boasting, like an ancient social media status or a tweet posted on a wall, or better said, a stone. One such example of a runestone from the 11th century where a man named Vigmund had it carved for himself, calling himself the cleverest of men. He even added that he was a ship captain, and yes, he made sure everyone knew that while he was alive. In the Old Norse poem Havamal, Odin says he hung on the world tree for 9 nights, pierced by a spear, to gain knowledge of the runes. This goes to show just how powerful and mystical those symbols were perceived to be. It's fitting that the word rune comes from a Proto-Germanic word which can be translated as secret or whisper. There's a common saying about power being in words, and for the old Germanic tribes, that power felt like actual magic. It's also why it's important to know when this magic came to be. And the Svingerud runestone tells us that. But it's not just when it was written, it's also what's written on it, where, and why. The location where the Svingerud stone was discovered is already a significant archaeological site. It's famous for its incredible discoveries, including the remarkable Jormungbu helmet, the only Viking helmet ever found in Norway. The stone was placed in a cremation pit, alongside the remains of an adult and a few personal items. Thanks to charcoal and bone samples, researchers can figure out how old the runestone is by using a method called radiocarbon dating. The Svingerud stone isn't the first ancient Norse artifact with runes that archaeologists have discovered, not even close. People carved runes into all sorts of everyday objects like combs, jewelry, and knives long ago. Some of those might even be just as old. Other finds have runes, but they're often broken, loose, or don't have clear dating. However, with radiocarbon dating, scientists have confirmed that the Svingerud stone is really the oldest runestone ever found. The writing on it suggests that it was part of a ritual and might have even been a message to the deceased. The inscription isn't long. It's just one word, Idiburg. No one knows exactly what it means. The clearest part says Idibera, and most researchers agree it's probably a name. Maybe Idibera in a genitive form, meaning of Idibera or belonging to Idibera. So this could be the name of the person buried there or someone being honored. There's a decent chance it's a female name, possibly making this the earliest known female rune inscriber in history. But researchers now believe that the Svingerud runestone is a part of a bigger monument. They found more than a dozen sandstone pieces scattered across several graves at the site, and when they assembled them in the lab, they fit together like a puzzle. This suggests they all came from one single upright stone. The main piece with the inscription was found in one grave, but other similar pieces were buried in nearby cremation pits. Archaeologists think it was broken and reused in a ritual, maybe to connect different people or generations who had been buried there. Instead of just marking one grave, it might have first been a memorial and was later put back into the other graves as a symbolic act. Some even speculate that the runes might have been carved by different hands throughout various time periods. The Svingerud stone might be small, but as the oldest runestone ever found with a secure archaeological context, it could be the key to how writing first took root in Northern Europe. This Norwegian archaeological discovery proves that runes were already tied to ritual, memory, and maybe even women. And if it's just a fragment of a larger monument, we've only seen part of the picture. Ancient Norse artifacts like this reshape what we know about pre-Viking history. And with luck, more runestones will follow, maybe even from another female rune inscriber.
Hey, I bet you didn't know that trees used to grow in the middle of Egypt's barren, sun-roasted Sinai desert. It's true. If you can't picture it, I don't blame you. But archaeologists have recently stumbled upon a tree-lined boulevard. Yep, an actual green avenue leading to a massive ancient fortress. No, this isn't some mirage or an overactive imagination, although I do have one. But it's turning our ideas of ancient Egyptian desert life upside down. Let's rewind a bit. The site in question is called Tel Abu Saifi, located in the northern part of the Sinai Peninsula. For a long time, it was known as a dusty archaeological footnote, the home of ruins from the Ptolemaic and Roman periods. You know, the era after Alexander the Great swaggered through Egypt and the Roman Empire called dibs. But recently, Egypt's Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities decided to give it a fresh dig. And what they found out turned to be more than just a forgotten outpost. We're talking about a full-on military fortress with defensive trenches, paved roads, lime kilns, barracks for soldiers, and even room for their families. A whole bunch of living quarters right in the middle of a desert doesn't feel very homey until you remember our star, the unexpected Green Avenue. This road was over 300 feet long and 36 feet wide, as long as an American football field, paved with limestone slabs and lined with more than 500 clay planting pits. These weren't for show. They held actual trees, creating a shaded tree-line entrance straight to the fortress. Imagine walking through that, the sun blazing overhead, and suddenly, blessed shade. Ooh. Now, that's not just a grand entrance, that's an ancient red carpet, or maybe a green one. But this wasn't about curb appeal. The existence of hundreds of trees in a desert landscape over 2,000 years ago tells us something big. You see, the Ptolemaic Egyptians weren't simply good at building monuments. They were also masters of water management. In a place where rainfall is rarer than a selfie with a pharaoh, they somehow found a way to grow rows of trees. Now, let that sink in. To irrigate that many trees in a desert, they must have had a sophisticated irrigation or water transport system, something capable of moving and distributing water efficiently in this harsh climate. Maybe they channeled groundwater, or maybe they captured seasonal rain, or maybe ancient sprinkler systems. Okay, maybe not that fancy. But still, it's clear they were ahead of their time. Here's the thing, we already know the Egyptians mastered water control. They harnessed the Nile with ditches and canals to feed distant fields. So irrigation wasn't exactly a mystery to them. They had the skills and the knowledge. And sure, scientists still debate what the Sinai climate was like 2,000 years ago. But many believe it may have once been greener. After all, take one look at those dramatic mountains and rocky landscapes, shaped and sculpted as if by brute force of ancient rivers. And it's hard not to think that water once played a bigger role out there. Plus, archaeologists have found tons of evidence showing that Ptolemaic Egyptians cultivated fruits, vines, and trees on a large scale. In other words, growing a forest in a desert might feel wild to us, but to them, it was just another Tuesday. And now, this Green Avenue is making archaeologists wonder, what if similar irrigation systems were used elsewhere, say for transporting the enormous stones used to build the pyramids? There's already a theory that ancient rivers or human-made canals helped move those stones. And the Tel Abu Saifi discovery? Well, it might just be the missing puzzle piece. This isn't just a dream. Back then, rivers were like highways, power grids, and cargo trains of the ancient world, all rolled into one. Egyptians used them for everything – irrigating crops, trading goods, powering industry, and even mobilizing for war. If you were doing something important, odds are it involved a river. But wait, it gets even better. Excavations revealed deep defensive trenches, like ancient moats, dug more than 6 feet deep around the fortress. Those weren't just muddy ditches. They were part of an elaborate defense system designed to be filled or bridged to control access. Think of it as ancient Egypt's version of a retractable security gate, minus the hydraulics. And while the trenches were keeping intruders out, life inside the fortress was bustling. Remember how we said archaeologists had found military housing units? It turns out soldiers might have lived there with their families. So this wasn't just a barracks, it was a thriving community, with meals, routines, kids playing, and probably a whole lot of ancient gossip flying around the dinner table. In addition to all the military stuff, Researchers found 4 massive lime kilns used to produce quicklime, an essential ingredient for making construction mortar. These kilns are a big deal because they suggest that during the later Roman period, Tel Abu Saifi turned into an industrial hub. It was like the Home Depot of ancient Egypt, churning out materials to build and repair buildings. But here's where the plot thickens. Underneath all of this, beneath the roads, the trenches, the kilns, archaeologists found the corners of an even older structure, a mystery building. Could it be the remains of a third, much older fortress? Or an ancient cemetery or lost city? Nobody knows yet, but one thing's clear: this story isn't over. Honestly, this might be the coolest archaeological cliffhanger of the decade. So, what does this all mean? Well, for starters, it challenges everything we assumed about desert life in ancient Egypt. For the longest time, deserts were thought of as natural barriers, dry, deadly, and empty. But this find suggests that the desert might have once been green and full of life, not because the climate was dramatically different, but because the Egyptians were incredibly good at bending the environment to their will. They didn't just survive in the desert, they transformed it. It also adds fuel to the fire in the age-old debate about ancient Egyptian tech. If they could build a fortress with tree-lined roads, moats, irrigation, and industry in the middle of the Sinai, is it really such a stretch to imagine they could engineer water channels to move pyramid stones? Forget the Ancient Aliens TV show. Sure, it's entertaining, I'll give you that, but it makes us forget something crucial. Those people were brilliant. A lot of what we call modern technology is recycled ancient ingenuity. And who knows how much knowledge we've lost over time. Meanwhile, the dig continues. Scientists are now mapping the entire Tel Abu Saifi site, trying to piece together how all the structures connect. Some want to analyze soil samples to find traces of old tree roots and maybe even figure out what kinds of trees once grew there. Imagine if they were date palms. We might be looking at the world's oldest snack lane. You already know that the implications of the discoveries don't stop with history books, right? This kind of discovery has modern relevance too. Our world is going through a lot of change, with crazy weather and huge heat waves. So maybe we should be asking, what can we learn from ancient civilizations that once made the desert bloom? If nothing else, Tel Abu Saifi reminds us that the ancient Egyptians were more than just pharaohs, pyramids, and mummies. They were visionary planners, eco-architects, and straight-up problem solvers. They didn't wait for nature to hand them what they needed, they engineered it. And thanks to discoveries like this, we're getting a clearer picture of just how advanced and, frankly, how cool ancient Egyptian civilization really was. So next time someone tells you deserts are just empty wastelands, you can hit them with this fun fact. Over 2,000 years ago, in the heart of the Sinai Desert, there was a fortress with a tree-lined avenue, moats, military housing, an industrial center, and even a secret underground structure. Take that, sand dunes! Who knows what else is still buried out there, waiting to rewrite history. Now, this bad boy was the size of a husky and could maybe pass for one, except it didn't have any fur and was a top predator with extra long, blade-like canine teeth. Ooh, charming. Meet the earliest known saber-toothed animal to have ever lived. It roamed the Earth well before the dinosaurs. Scientists made the description of this creature based on its fossils found on the Spanish island of Majorca in the Mediterranean Sea. About 200 million years ago, none of us were around then, the very first true mammals appeared, and they lived right alongside the dinosaurs. But if we trace the family tree of mammals even further back, we'll find an ancient group called theropsids. They didn't look like mammals we have today, but they had some key features that would eventually help define mammals. For example, theropsids had special openings on the sides of their skulls for jaw muscles, and parts of their jawbones would later evolve into the tiny middle ear bones that all mammals, including you, have today. So, the new discovery is what might be the oldest known theropsid fossil. The fossil, which doesn't have an official species name yet, belongs to a group called Gorgonopsians. Those guys are more closely related to mammals than they are to any other living animals. Some of them were as small as cats, and others were as massive as polar bears. Gorgonopsians had some very mammal-like traits, like different types of teeth for different jobs. But unlike mammals, these ancient predators kept replacing their teeth, even their giant saber-like canines, over and over during their lives. Hey, that would be handy. Until now, the oldest Gorgonopsian fossils we knew about were around 265 million years old. But this new fossil is even older, dating back between 270 and 280 million years. The find was super detailed and complete, including its sharp knife-like fangs, part of its jaw, pieces of its spine, ribs, tailbones, and toe bones, plus most of one of its back legs. Even though the creature's skull wasn't complete, the scientists think it was about 7 inches long, and the animal itself would have been around the size of a medium-large dog, weighing between 66 and 88 pounds. But other than that, it didn't really look much like a dog. Even though it had some lizard-like features, calling it a lizard dog is totally wrong. Mammals and reptiles do share a super ancient ancestor from about 320 million years ago, but their evolutionary paths split a long time ago. When the newly found creature was alive, the island of Majorca was right in the middle of the gigantic supercontinent Pangaea. Back then, this area went through super wet and super dry seasons. Scientists have always wondered if major moments in mammal history happened in tropical places like this, but we just didn't have the right fossils to prove it. Now, with the discovery of the oldest known Gorgonopsian in Majorca, the missing pieces of the puzzle are coming together. It looks like some huge steps in mammal evolution could have happened in low-latitude environments we haven't explored much yet. The so-called gap in the fossil record might just be because paleontologists weren't looking in the right spots. Our hero of the day wasn't the only cool guy rocking the planet before dinos settled in. Over 500 million years ago, the weirdest predators to have ever existed ruled the oceans. The name is a bit tricky to pronounce, so I'm not going to. Okay, it's Anomalocaris, but it just literally means unusual shrimp. This creature looked nothing like anything alive today. Scientists think it was the first true apex predator, the orca of its time. Anomalocaris was massive for its era, as it grew up to 3 feet from its sharp grabbing arms to the tips of its tail fins. For a while, everyone thought trilobites were its go-to meal, but new research shows it wasn't strong enough to crack open trilobite armor. So instead, it was a speedy, agile hunter with awesome vision, and it often picked off soft-body animals that zipped through the open water. Now, another really cool creature from pre-dino times is a fish that could walk on land. Tiktaalik lived in marshy rivers that looked a lot like today's Amazon rainforest. It could grow up to 9 feet long, and it found its prey in rivers and inlets like a modern-day freshwater crocodile. It had a flexible neck and even some early versions of lungs, and thanks to them, it could survive both in water and out of it. Why fish like Tiktaalik started moving toward land about 395 million years ago is still a bit of a mystery. Around that time, the ancient supercontinent called Gondwana was drifting closer to the land that would become North America. This slow movement created lots of shallow, swampy habitats, which were perfect places for crocodile-like animals to thrive. Plus, these areas were near the equator, so they were warm and tropical. But there wasn't a lot of food waiting for them on land, so maybe they moved there for safety reasons. There were fewer predators and better spots to lay eggs there compared to the water. Creatures first adapted to living in open water, then shallow water, then marshes and river edges, and only after a long, slow transition did they finally step fully onto land. Now, how about a millipede the size of a small car and weighing as much as a large dog? This beauty lived over 300 million years ago in what is now England. Back then, during the Carboniferous period, Earth's atmosphere had way more oxygen, over 26%, compared to today's 21%. Scientists used to think the high oxygen levels were the only reason these creatures could get so big. But back then, they found a new fossil from a time when oxygen wasn't that much higher than today. They discovered it purely by accident, when a boulder split just right and revealed one of the most complete and largest giant millipede specimens ever. This one could have lived not just in swampy areas, but also in open woodlands filled with tasty seeds, nuts, and maybe even small animals. There's a chance that this beast wasn't a slow, plant-munching crawler, but a predator that would snap up whatever it could find. After dominating the Earth for about 45 million years, the giant millipedes eventually vanished. Probably the reptiles pushed them out, clearing the way for the age of the dinosaurs. Now, in case you ever wondered what would happen if you crossed a polar bear with a saber-toothed cat, here's the answer. This guy ruled the southern ecosystems after migrating 7,000 miles across the supercontinent Pangaea around 252 million years ago. It had a tough skin like a rhino's and massive canines, perfect for tearing away huge chunks of meat, and it was an excellent runner. Once it got to its new home in what is now South Africa, it replaced a whole group of local predators. But its glory didn't last long, as closer to the end of the Permian period, massive volcanic eruptions made the weather patterns change and wiped out about 90% of all species. And because top predators are usually big, slow to grow, and not super common, they often vanish among the first when massive extinction events hit. And that's how our guy here went extinct. Our final creature of the day was a dragonfly that lived around 300 million years ago and had a wingspan of over 2 feet, 6 long, spiny legs, and huge, bulging eyes. Meganjura. This 4-winged giant is most likely the largest flying insect that ever lived, and it easily outsizes today's dragonflies, which are its distant relatives. Like modern dragonflies, Meganjura like to hang out in open areas near ponds and slow-moving streams. But unlike today's dragonflies, it wasn't just catching tiny bugs. This guy was likely the top predator in these open spaces. It used the spines on its legs like a flying trap to snatch prey out of the air, including other flying insects, small amphibians, and even lizard-like creatures. Scientists found the first fossils of Meganjura in 1880 in the coal-rich rocks in France. The fossils were incredibly well preserved and showed off the detailed vein patterns in their wings. Scientists think Meganjura grew so huge because it didn't have much competition from vertebrates, and the air back then, during the Carboniferous period, had a lot more oxygen than it does today.
In 1850, French scientist Auguste Mariette went to Egypt looking for manuscripts, but accidentally found a head of a sphinx sticking out of the dunes. He cleared the sand and figured out the sphinx was guiding the entrance to some underground construction. Several months later, he finally entered the Serapeum of Saqqara. Inside, he found an enormous granite sarcophagi with remnants of 64 bulls. Scientists are still amazed by the tech that the ancient Egyptians used to transport those enormous boxes. The Serapeum was built around the year 3000 before the Common Era. It was an underground tomb built to honor the sacred Apis bulls of ancient Egypt. It had a long hallway, almost 500 feet long, with giant stone rooms on both sides. Some of the sarcophagi weighed as much as 50 average cars, and all of them were made with super precision, with exact 90-degree angles. These sarcophagi were beautifully decorated with hieroglyphs and carvings that told stories about the lives and importance of the Apis bulls. Now, there are 24 sarcophagi left. In ancient Egypt, Apis bulls were very special animals connected to the deity Ptah. They thought the bulls carried Ptah's spirit and wisdom, helped the pharaoh, and protected the Egyptians. Priests looked for special markings on young bulls to find Apis bulls. It could be a white triangle on its forehead, which symbolized divine light, a shape on its back like a vulture's wing, and a scarab shape under its tongue, which stood for rebirth. If a bull had these signs, they believed it was chosen by Ptah and treated it like royalty. The chosen bulls lived in a special temple in Memphis, the city where they worshipped Ptah. They received the best care and offerings from visitors who wanted their blessings. When an Apis bull passed away, it was treated with great honor and mummified. When Mariette entered the Serapeum, he noticed traces of rollers on the gallery's floor and found 2 wooden horizontal winches. Each had 8 levers. Later, other explorers saw double rails. The burial chambers were lower than the hallway floor. To get the boxes into place, workers filled the chambers with sand so the sarcophagi could be rolled in straight. Then they slowly removed the sand to gently lower the boxes into perfectly cut spaces in the bedrock. A carved stone sign found in the Serapeum said it took 28 days to move just one sarcophagus and its lid into its spot during the time of Ptolemy II. The extreme precision of the sarcophagi with 90-degree angles also has an explanation. Ancient Egyptians wrote texts, or rather, papyrus, on geometry a long time ago. It shows that they knew the approximate number pi and could calculate the volume of a pyramid with its top cut off. If they could figure out complicated math like that back then, it makes sense that they could also carve perfectly flat surfaces 500 years later. All this sounds pretty legit, but some people think certain things don't add up here. The size of boxes is way larger than the size of bulls, yet they buried pharaohs in tiny coffins that barely fit their bodies. The sarcophagi are made out of granite with crazy precision, and they could have just used limestone, which would have made things way easier. The transportation of the boxes seems pretty simple, but only in theory. If one person could pull about 440 pounds, then at least 250 people would be needed to pull just one box. The tunnels in the Serapeum are really narrow, only about 2 feet wider than the boxes themselves. There's no way hundreds of people could have squeezed into those tight spaces to pull the boxes. And even if they did, how would they turn the box in the cramped corridor, lower it into its niche, and place it perfectly in the middle? Somehow, they did this 24 times, and every box is centered perfectly. Plus, the chambers were dusty, and there were no signs of soot from lamps. This means they must have worked in almost complete darkness. The real use of the boxes could also be different. A long time ago, even before the Egyptian pharaohs ruled, the local people already knew how to use fermentation. It happens when tiny organisms called yeast eat certain ingredients like starch and turn them into gas and ethanol. So someone in ancient Egypt probably put food like barley, bread, and even meat inside a giant stone box, then closed it tight with a heavy lid. These stone boxes, carved from granite, were so precisely made that they were almost completely sealed, so nothing could escape from it. As the yeast inside the box started working, it created more and more CO2 gas. It built up pressure inside the box. The granite boxes were incredibly strong. They could handle more pressure than a car tire can hold. When granite was squeezed under such pressure, its crystals produced a tiny electric charge. This effect was possible because granite contains quartz, a material that reacts to pressure this way. The process also needed meat or animal parts, possibly to help the yeast grow better. Meat contains something called oleic acid, which yeast needs to keep growing and to survive the bad effects of the ethanol it produces. As the pressure inside the box kept growing, the combination of gases and electricity made these boxes not just ancient fridges, but powerful energy systems. Over time, the pressure inside got so strong that it could push the lid open and the gas would escape with a pop. But when people rediscovered the Serapeum in 1850, they found old drawings that showed piles of stones stacked on top of some of the box lids. So, someone long ago probably tried to make the lids even heavier by adding extra weight to make it harder for the gas pressure to push them open. This extra weight also meant the quartz crystals in the granite could keep creating more electricity under all that pressure. If someone opened one of these stone boxes thousands of years later, they would only find bones from bulls that were placed in the box. And that's exactly what Mariette discovered in the 1850s. They opened the Serapeum for visitors soon after the first excavations in the second half of the 19th century. Prince of Wales even had a luncheon with his guests in one of the sarcophagi. Sands and earthquakes made the site inaccessible for a while, but now you can visit it again and try to solve the mystery yourself. With new tech, We could have answers to many other historical mysteries soon. A team of scientists at Chicago's Field Museum of Natural History recently used a special CT scanner to learn more about ancient Egyptian mummies without unwrapping them. They gently rolled 26 mummies on custom carts out to the parking lot, where the scanner was waiting. It took thousands of detailed X-ray pictures of each mummy and their coffins. When all the pictures were put together, they created 3D images that showed what was inside, the skeletons, and some artifacts. The scientists hope these images will help them understand ancient Egyptian burial practices from over 3,000 years ago. Even though the scanning process only took 4 days, it might take 3 years to study all the data. But scientists were able to learn some personal details about the mummies. One of the most popular mummified individuals at the museum, Lady Chineta, was a woman who lived in ancient Egypt about 3,000 years ago. It looks like she passed away in her late 30s or early 40s. To make sure her body looked complete for the afterlife, embalmers put stuffing in her neck to keep it from collapsing. They also placed artificial eyes in her sockets, so she would have eyes in the next world. She was wrapped in fancy linen and placed in a beautifully decorated coffin. The scans revealed that it had been carefully crafted with a slit at the back, which embalmers used to fit the body. There were also some artistic details on the surface, like markings for her knees. It looks like her burial was on the scale of a high-end luxury car. Tunnels, metro, underground systems, and even secret passageways to the houses of the rich and famous. Why else do we need tunnels, you may wonder? To hide. Many cities have underground tunnels and even underground doppelgangers. Now let's make it clear. Those passages are normally not connected, contrary to the popular rumor claiming that it was possible to get from Scotland to Turkey using underground passageways built around 5,000 years ago. I mean, it sounds insane even today. Imagine building it back in the day. These tunnels have an official name, the Erdstall Tunnels, and they were most likely built in the Middle Ages. However, we still don't have the exact information about the date. The highest concentration of those tunnels are in Bavaria, Germany, but there are many of them in Great Britain and France too. Erdstall tunnels, a unique type of earthen passage found globally, are characterized by their narrow, oval-shaped corridors and tight choke points, known as schlups, or slip-outs. Despite speculation, their purpose remains a mystery. However, some of those tunnels have fireplaces and even vents, which might mean those were used primarily for shelter. Dating back to the Middle Ages, possibly as early as the 12th century, Erdstall tunnels lack archaeological signs and historical records. So it's not a surprise that there are many rumors about their use. Some scientists are sure those were storage spaces, though their narrowness makes this impractical. Another idea is that they provided hiding spots for farmers during tribal raids. However, their single entry point raises doubts about their effectiveness in evading threats. Now, if you're feeling like Indiana Jones and want to venture into those tunnels, you're in luck. A few structures, like the Erdstall Radkobluken in Austria, welcome visitors to explore these enigmatic structures. Most of them are closed to the public eye, though. The origins of Erdstall tunnels remain largely unknown, just like their real functions. And if you think, hey, it's the 21st century here, we can study pretty much everything, well, you're wrong. What makes these tunnels hard to study are the tight confines. Traditional surveying methods often prove inadequate in such spaces. To solve this problem, scientists use a handheld device that integrates an RGB camera, a gyroscope, and high-resolution depth sensors, allowing them to capture intricate details of the tunnels. They also use modern techniques like 3D surveying in hopes of uncovering the true origins and purposes of those tunnels. One hypothesis even suggests they may have been poorly conceived dwellings, abandoned when their inadequacies became apparent. Still, not everyone quite agrees with this idea. Other theories suggest they served spiritual purposes, while the most intriguing idea speculates that those tunnels may be remnants of extraterrestrial civilizations. Experts believe they may have been used for practical matters, such as granaries or hiding spots from looters. As we don't have exact info on who built it and when, it may be pretty much anyone, even a sloth. Nope, I'm not a lunatic. Sloths can build giant tunnels. Check this out. In 2009, a farmer in southern Brazil was driving his tractor through a cornfield when it suddenly sank into the ground. He quickly discovered he had broken through the top of an underground tunnel. When researchers came to investigate, they found a tunnel around 6.5 feet high and the same 6.5 feet wide, extending about 50 feet long, right beneath the farmer's house. When they looked closer, they instantly saw deep claw marks on the walls. That was the proof the tunnel wasn't human-made. So that thing the farmer uncovered was a megafauna paleoburrow, a prehistoric tunnel dug by ancient creatures like giant ground sloths or giant armadillos from over 10,000 years ago. I know, it's hard to imagine those beasts, but let me help you. Take a hamster. Now, increase it to the size of an elephant. Don't forget, this 13-foot-tall hamster could also walk on 2 legs. During their time, around 15 million to 10,000 years ago, many species of sloths and giant armadillos roamed the Americas, some even digging similar tunnels. Today, many of these tunnels are filled with sediment, though some remain clear, similar to the one the farmer discovered. This 2009 find sparked significant interest, leading to the discovery of over 1,500 paleoburrows across southern Brazil, making it the era with the highest concentration of such sites worldwide. But no one knows exactly why there are so many of them in southern Brazil. While some paleoburrows exist throughout South America, none have been found in North America, which is weird since those huge sloths roamed the entire continent. The exact purpose of these large tunnels remains a mystery, but scientists believe they may have served as nursing spaces, temperature regulation, or hibernation areas. Tunnels likely developed over centuries as successive generations of sloths and armadillos expanded them. Now, let's take a look at fugus. No, not the Japanese fatal delicacy, and no, not a town in New Guinea. To see them, we gotta travel to the UK. So fugus are underground structures too, but they don't look exactly like tunnels. They are dry stone structures. They look as if a cave had been decorated with stones from the inside. There are only around 15 of them found so far, and most of them are located in Cornwall. According to the estimates, those tunnels were built about 2,400 years ago, and they're still in pristine condition, which is truly fascinating. I mean, back in the day, people had no cool machinery whatsoever, yet their structures still last. And if you dare to buy an apartment today, well, chances are you won't be too happy about the quality. Going back to our fugus, there's nothing extraordinary about their supposed purpose. They could be used for spiritual purposes, as a place to hide, or a food storage. The latest application, though, is a bit weird. I guess it's not a secret for anyone that England is famous for its excessive humidity. And if you want to store your food properly, you gotta avoid the humidity at all costs. Otherwise, say welcome to mold and fungi. But ancient people weren't dull-witted at all, or they wouldn't have survived, and you and I wouldn't be around now. So they might have adapted those fugus to store just some products, those that already had natural molds in them, assisting in the preservation of perishable food, like milk, butter, and cheese. But hey, those are just speculations. The true reason why they were built remains unknown. What makes fugus unique is that they are intentionally built tunnels, not just excavated mines like those in Wales. They were crafted by digging deep trenches, lining them with stone slabs, covering them with capstones, and then filling over them, all of which took significant time and effort. Still, no matter how hard those were to construct, cities around the globe are often built over intricate tunnel systems, each unique to its location. For instance, Paris is famous for its extensive underground quarries, which were abandoned years ago, but still pose a risk of collapse in certain areas above. London boasts one of the largest tunnel networks in the world, including many that were specifically created for military purposes. In New York City, there are rumors of secret tunnels, while Los Angeles has old tunnels from the Prohibition era used for speakeasies. Many other cities also have their share of enigmatic tunnels, and surprisingly, Florida is no exception. It happened in the year 2011 in Ybor City. Near a former post office, flooding uncovered something weird, a section of an unknown structure. Back then, people didn't pay much attention to that, so it took another 7 years to discover something truly fascinating. This historic neighborhood was founded in the 1880s, but it remained unknown until 2018 that it also has a hidden tunnel network. We only learned of it because of renovation work. The exact purpose, of course, is unknown, but most scientists are pretty sure that they serve to connect to early gaming spots and the port of Tampa. Figuring out how extensive the tunnel network is tricky. In 2018, a historic home in Seminole Heights revealed locked doors leading to tunnels from the 1920s. One local even said he traveled through a tunnel for 20 minutes. Rumors suggest some tunnels connect to the Hillsborough River and Ybor City. Research is ongoing, but no new info has emerged yet.